Over the last 12 weeks, we've been going through the 12 steps out of the NA and AA literature. Tonight we're going to be talking about the 12th step, which says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry the message and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. What does that mean to you, Leslie?
Well, when I work the steps, I change. I transform myself to someone better, someone that God wants me to be. And because of that, I need to share it with other people, either through AA meetings or here at church, or just how I behave or how I talk. But I learn it from other people, so I need to do the same and teach others.
That's good. What about you, Sean?
When I think of the 12 steps, I have a unique opportunity because living in Serenity Village, it gives me a chance to show other guys coming in, kind of be an ambassador and help them out as they go on their journey through the 12 steps.
That's good. Mike?
The 12th step to me is actions speak louder than words, and I've been blessed to have people like my pastor and others put in my life to actually see their example of service so I could learn how to be of service.
That's good. Nick?
When it comes to step 12, it's really the reason I'm here, and it's not necessarily the reason I'm at Serenity Village or here on Tuesday nights, but that's a big part. But without the people that preceded me, I would not be here without them carrying the message to me. And as a tribute to them, I think it's important that I carry it on. And I always look at the prodigal son as a great verse for chapter 12, is when the lost sheep is found, there's a big celebration. And I want to be part of that. I want to be a reason other people are being celebrated. But without step 12, I don't think this would be one of the largest recoveries in the state, and I definitely wouldn't be here or at the stage I'm at now.
That's good. Karen?
Mine is, I think of it as spiritual realization. I always knew God was there somewhere for me, but since being in Serenity Village, I've come to realize His love and His Spirit, and it's enabled me to work the steps. And especially when I see family and friends seeing how far I've come before, they share the word with other people. Because addiction runs pretty rampant in our family. And I've just never felt this way before. I sobered up for 14 years. Or 16 years ago, I didn't have a drink for 14 years. But I was living, I wasn't feeling. And it's just awesome.
That's good. So tonight we're going to talk about really practicing these principles that we've learned in the previous 11 steps into all of our affairs, how to carry the message, as well as what does a spiritual awakening look like. It's going to be awesome. I was at Anoka AA probably 7 years ago. Steve had invited me and a couple of the guys to attend I believe it was a banquet for people celebrating 1 and more years of sobriety. And this reading that I'm going to ask Steve to read, titled Why We Were Chosen, was read during that meeting, and it changed the course of my life. Let's welcome Steve Skowronek.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Steve, and I'm an alcoholic. Why we were chosen. God in His wisdom selected this group of men and women to be purveyors of His goodness. And selecting them through whom to bring about this phenomenon, He went not to the proud, the mighty, the famous, or the brilliant. He went instead to the humble, to the sick, and to the unfortunate. He went right to the drunkard, the so-called weakling of the world, who might have said to us, "Unto your weak and feeble hands I have entrusted a power beyond estimate. To you has been given that which has been denied the most learned of your fellows. Not to the scientists or the statesmen, not to the wives or mothers, not even to my priests or ministers have I given this gift of healing other alcoholics, which I entrust to you. It must be used unselfishly. It carries with it grave responsibility. No day can be too long. No demands upon your time can be too urgent. No case too pitiful and no task too hard. Also, no effort too great. It must be used with tolerance, for I have restricted its application to no race, creed, or denomination. Personal criticism you must expect. Lack of appreciation will be common. Ridicule will be your lot. Your motives will be misjudged. You must be prepared for adversity, for what men call adversity is the ladder you must use to ascend the rungs towards spiritual perfection. And remember, in the exercise of this power, I shall not exact from you beyond your capabilities. You are not selected because of exceptional talents, and be careful always if success attends your efforts, not to ascribe to personal superiority that to which you can lay claim, and only by virtue of my gift. If I had wanted learned men to accomplish this mission, the power would have been entrusted to the physician and the scientist. If I wanted eloquent men, there would have been many anxious for the assignment, for talk is the easiest use of all talents, which I have endowed mankind. If I had wanted scholarly men, the world is filled with better qualified men than you who would be available. You were selected because you have been the outcasts of the world, and your long experience as drunkards has made or should make you humbly alert to the cries of distress that come from the lonely hearts of alcoholics everywhere. Keep ever in mind the admission you made on the day of your professional in AA, namely that you are powerless, and it was only with your willingness to turn your life and will unto my keeping that relief came to you.
That changed the course of my life. Before we started the church, I really took notice to the fact that I got here not because I deserved it. And this call and this gift and this ability that God has given each and every one of us to carry the message is a profound thing, but it's not about us, as Robin said. It's about, and Nick said it in the video, it's about the people that have taught us, and no different than what I said about Brian, that he pays it forward, and that's truly what it is. And you cannot keep what you have unless you give it away. And God is so good, and God is so merciful, and God is so gracious, and God is not mad at us. Even after the fact that I was extremely successful at failing, He continued to give me a chance, and I found my greatest fulfillment in life in helping another individual. But it's so powerful that when you get out of your own way and walk in humility and you say, well, I ain't got nothing to offer, I'm a loser. No, you got a lot to offer. You're still here. You know, Sue and Jean are here. Stand up. Their daughter died in her addiction. Let's give them a hand. She's not still here, but they still come. And that should tell you there's more happening in these rooms than just addicts and alcoholics can get. What you contain through your experience of the things that you're trying to not think about are the very things that can benefit somebody that's still lost. So, Lord, I thank you for another day above ground and out of prison. Lord, I ask that you give me the words to say, then you think through my mind and speak through my vocal cords as we talk about the assignment, the message, Lord, that you have given us to carry to people that are still suffering. And Lord, by doing that, we can keep what we have and continue to evolve in the gift that has been given to us called life. We thank you for not just life, we thank you for the abundant life. We not just thank you for the ability to enjoy life, but we thank you for the ability to enjoy it so it's so full that it will overflow into other people's lives. So do whatever you're going to do. I step out of the way. I ask for forgiveness that there's anything in me that's not of you, and I'm sure there's a laundry list, but I'm able to receive today the forgiveness that you have to offer, so I can stand here purified to talk to the champions that you have called out from the pit of hell to have a life that they could ever ask or imagine. In your name we pray, amen. So I want to review quickly the steps previous, and I've been using the reference. I'm going to go a little different route here tonight. about the 12 steps. I've been using the analogy and the visual of the floor of the sanctuary being our addiction and all the different things that are compiled within active addiction. The consequences in family and health and mental health, financial, legal problems, and anything that is everything that my addiction caused is a representation of this main floor. In the past weeks, I've been using this first step as an example of the first step. I'm going to get away from that a little bit tonight, but I want to hit it real quick. Because the reason why, in this analogy, that the first step is elongated like this, boy, I did pretty good. Is elongated actually a word? All right, praise God. I'm going better. I'm getting better. But a lot of us spend too much time on the first step pacing back and forth. Am I powerless? Am I not powerless? Can I drink? Can I not drink? Can I smoke? Can I not smoke? Can I go to the casino and handle it? Can I not? And we spend a lot of years pacing back and forth, trying to figure out if we're powerless. Now, if we would just stop for a moment and look at the sanctuary floor of our unmanageability, that should tell us. And everybody else can see it but us. But the first step says admitted. So none of us are good at admitting anything. We're just not good at it. We can have all this stuff going on down here, but I'm not going to admit it. It's your fault, or that fault, or the drug's fault, or the alcohol's fault, or the blackjack dealer's fault, or the slot machine's fault. I'd say I'm not lucky. Bad luck followed. No. We fall. Wherever we go, there we are. So we can make choices, but we cannot pick the consequence of the choice. Wouldn't that be nice if I choose to go smoke crack tonight? I'll say, well, I'll pick this consequence, I'll pick that consequence, but that's it. That's not how this works. So now the second step, I'll use the analogy again. We him and ha about this. We might have admitted that we were powerless. Okay, you say I'm powerless. My consequences say I'm powerless. So I'm just going to tell you I think I'm powerless. But AA teaches us this is the first step. That this is the only step that we got to work as close to perfect, if not perfect, as possible. Because if you do not admit you're powerless in your life, you're going to go back here. And that's what it looked like for me for 20 years. In and out of treatment, jail, detox, going back and forth, pacing back and forth. But then a lot of us get stuck on the second step. Now, you cannot go to the second step without working a first step. But a lot of us do that. A lot of us pretend that we're working a second step when we truly in our souls have not admitted we're powerless. Robin, for example, admitted in her soul by asking God for 2 consecutive years to remove the desire. That's admitting you're powerless. So now we get to the second step. I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. I'm not even looking at you. I'm looking down at the ground because I'm full of shame and regret and condemnation and guilt that I can't look you in the eye. But if I would just stop and look around, there's enough evidence that there's some sort of power here that I can't describe that could restore me to sanity. But here's where a lot of us fail miserably. We think the insanity is here. And all of our consequences and the unmanageability. Yes, that's insane. But the insanity is in between your 2 ears that you cannot admit you're powerless. So we hurry up and we pretend like we work a second step, and then we go back down here to all of our consequences, and we try to get our outside world straightened out. And we're good because we're all talented, but we haven't learned character. Talent without character is wasted. Your talent will continuously take you to places in life that your character can't sustain you. That's a lot of us get fired. We get promoted quickly. We do well when we're on. But when we're off, there's very few people that get off like us. So we go back and forth. And then I've been using this analogy as a third step where you made a decision to turn your will in your life. Your will is your inside world. And your life is your outside world, your service, and like you heard from Robin and tonight in regards to that, I mean, it's the outside world and the inside world, and that's truly the key. But I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood Him. In the previous weeks, I've been using this as an analogy that this is limitless. And Brian proved that. It's limitless. He continues to evolve. But today, I want to use this example. So I worked the first step, and I admitted. Then I worked the second step. Then I worked the third step. Then I made a decision made a searching and fearless moral inventory of myself. And then I admitted to God, myself, and another human being the exact nature of my wrongs. And then I became entirely ready to have God remove my defects of character. Then I humbly asked God to remove my shortcomings. And then I became willing to make a list to everyone that I had harmed. And then I made direct amends wherever possible, unless would do so would injure them or others. And by doing all these, I'm looking at my problems a little differently. My problems now are a lot smaller. You look a lot smaller to me. And a lot of times problems are people. So then I sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God. And tonight we're on the 12th step. So in the steps, you never stop working them. There are days, every day I have to continue to take a personal inventory. Every day I have to sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God, praying only for the knowledge of His will and the power to carry that out. Now, when resentment comes in, I got to promptly admit it. When I get angry with you, I don't want to add to my 9th step amends. The 10th step will keep me from adding to the list in the 8th and 9th. And you know what? I'm tired of hurting people. So when shortcomings come back to me, I know that this is not part of me because I humbly ask God to remove them. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, but I'm also sick of me. So I've been all the work that it took to get all the way up here. I don't want to go back down there again. But some of us never make it up here. Some of us, we're in the 12th week and we haven't even started working the steps. So we get to a point, and the 12th step truly is this. The 12th step is doing this. Having had a spiritual awakening. So many people don't know what that is. But the 12th step says the spiritual awakening as a result of working the steps. So when I was up there, life looked a lot different. As a result of working the steps, I tried to carry the message and to practice these principles in all my affairs. And here's what this looks like. I may see somebody that's hurting, that walks into my meeting, and I may grab this person, and this person is walking around in shame and guilt and consequences. They still could be intoxicated. And I asked the person, do you want to work the steps? Do you want to work the steps? Absolutely. So let's go work the steps. Now, these are my steps. I can't work. These are his steps. But they're still these steps. His steps are different than my steps. But there's still these steps. So Bob comes to me, and I say, are you ready to work the steps? Well, let's take step 1. What does step 1 mean to you?
Step 1 means that I can't do this by myself anymore.
Tell me a little bit about your unmanageability.
All my life, I've pretty much done everything I want to do it my way. That seems to have just gotten me into trouble.
What kind of consequences are you facing right now?
I'm facing financial problems. I'm facing some health issues. I'm facing alienation from certain relationships.
So are you ready to take step 2?
Yes.
Step 2 says, came to believe a power greater than yourself could restore you to sanity. How are you going to be able to do that? What do you believe in?
Well, I always believed in myself. I realized that I can't do this anymore. There has to be a better way. There has to be something else, a power greater than myself that can handle my situation.
Where do you see evidence of that power working?
I see it in just simply my willingness to even think that something better than me can.
Do you see it in any of the people in the meeting?
Pardon?
Do you see it in any of the people in the meeting?
I see it all over in the meeting.
Do you see it in your sponsor being me?
Yes.
So that gives you hope that there is a power greater than yourself that can restore you to sanity?
Yep.
Are you ready to make a decision?
I am. I think.
We didn't rehearse this. He didn't even really know he was coming up here. And I'm here to tell you tonight, it's the same feeling that you feel that he felt walking up to this ladder with a microphone that he doesn't even know how it's working on his head. And it's the same feeling you're going to have internally when you walk up to your sponsor and say, I want to work the steps. Bob is feeling that right now sitting on this ladder. You won't have a ladder literally and physically, but you'll have the same feeling that Bob is having right now. Are you scared?
Fruitless.
How do you know there's a God?
Well, I've always been a Christian. I think it's been kind of just more of a subtle feeling. But I know there's a God because, number one, I'm still alive, and there must be something else in my future that he's got.
Are you ready to turn your will and your life over to the care of him?
Yes.
You truly, really don't quite understand him, do you?
No, I don't, but what have I got to lose?
You want me to show you how to turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understand him?
Yes.
Let's do a 4-step.
Favorite.
Give me the top 2 things that you're afraid of.
The top 2 things I'm afraid of is relationships and, relapsing.
Give me the top 2 things that you resent.
My ex-wife, and I resent a certain employer from my distant past.
Okay, so we just did a 5th step. Let's go to the 6th. Are you ready?
Yep.
What are these character things that keep holding you back?
A little bit of a feeling of still wanting to do everything myself. I'm very independent and I just depend on myself.
Are you ready to ask God to remove those shortcomings?
Yes.
Let's take another step. You're seeing something happen here, 2 things. We're getting closer to God, and we're getting closer to each other. And one thing that he resented and he was bad at was relationships. See the closeness here? Do you believe that God can truly remove the things that kept you from coming? You're always coming up short. How old are you?
I just turned 61.
Do you believe that God can take away those shortcomings that have held you back for 61 years?
I believe he can, yes.
Ask him.
God, please take away these imperfections in my life and everything that's holding me back from fulfilling your will for me and for me having a better life and to passing on a better life for others in my life.
Are you ready to talk about those people you had harmed? Let's take another step. Now, this step is just talking about willingness. I'm telling you, as your sponsor, you don't have to do it, but I just want you to write down all the people that you can think of today, and don't let your mind tell you that it's just people. There's no way you could ever remember. You don't have to. Just, are you willing to do that?
Reluctantly, but yes.
Are you willing to show me that list?
Yes, I will.
By now, do you trust me as your sponsor?
Yes.
Are you willing now to take the 9th step in order to go make some direct amends to the people I feel, and that God will inspire you to go see directly and then wait for others? And there are going to be people on this list that I'm going to tell you not to make amends to, and God will take care of it. Are you ready for that?
Yes, sir.
Let's take the 9th step. Look at how close we are together. See, now I'm going to tell you in a moment to go down and see some of those people that you've been running from your whole life. How does that feel?
Scary.
Who's going to help you with that?
You, my sponsor, and God.
Are you close to me right now?
Yes.
Are you closer to him?
Oh, yeah. This light is right there.
So we take a 10 step.
Okay.
So now we're a lot lighter, we're a lot higher. We can see life a little differently, and we're able to do this together. And what we find in recovery is that you will have people around you working these steps, And some people will be on the 4th step, some people will be on the 10th step. But if you see how God works, the closer we went. See, some of us never get this close to another human being. Some of us never get this close to God. Let's give God a hand. And we think it's so difficult, but I could grab anyone from the crowd that has never worked the steps and to do that. And even me, as a sponsor, I'm scared to work with new people. Because I've been hurt by a lot of people. And I've invested a lot of time in a lot of people that, in my opinion, it wasn't worth it. But that's a lie from the pit of hell. Because you're responsible for the planting. God takes care of the harvest. God says in his word, one plants, one waters, but only he can make it grow. So I'm not responsible for Bob's recovery. But if Bob is willing to work the steps with me, and just like I said, I want to, if I was to grab any of you right now and walk you up to that ladder, the feeling of uneasiness and fear and like, oh my God, am I going to do this right, is going to come just like Bob felt there and just like I did, because this is something we've never done. And this is what it says now in AA. It says the joy of living, the theme of AA's 12-step is action is the key word. That this is a program of action. It's not of talk. It says, here we turn outward towards our fellow alcoholics who are still in distress. Here we begin to practice. It's all about practice. It's progress, not perfection. You're not going to do it perfectly. The 12 steps of the program in our daily lives, so we and those about may find emotional sobriety. There's a difference between sobriety and emotional sobriety. And a lot of us just have sobriety. We do not have emotional sobriety. It says, but as time passed, we found that the help of AA's 12 steps, we could lose those fears. I mean, can you imagine as him and I were walking up that ladder? It was scary. I mean, I may be in the painting business, but I'm not a guy who gets on ladders. But it goes on to say, could lose the fears no matter what the material prospects were. You can be happy in spite of your circumstances. It goes on to say now, we could cheerfully perform humble labor. See, everybody wants to be on the stage, but you got to cheerfully perform humble labor without worrying about tomorrow. If our circumstances happen to be good, we are no longer dreaded the change for others. We can't live our lives waiting for the other shoes to drop because we're not known as patient people. So if we got an impending doom on us and something good is happening in our lives, the next thing we start feeling, because we're not in emotional sobriety, is we're going to wait. Oh, it's just a matter of time before I fail. You'll have people telling you that. Who are you going to believe, them or God? But we don't. See, here's how I used to roll. I'd go into a judge or my wife at the time is, and she's an excellent woman. I'm best of friends with her now, and we have a great relationship because that's what the promises of the program do. But here's what I'm telling you is this, that I used to leave court cases or, whatever else. Oh, you're going to, I always say to myself, I'm going to prove you wrong. How many people have told people they're going to prove them wrong? Why do you always prove them right? And getting back to the impending doom that a lot of us feel, that I used to feel, not being very patient. So if we got the impending doom, it's just a matter of time before the other shoe drops, we force it down. Those of us who have abandonment issues, we won't wait because our fear is that you're going to leave us. So we're going to do something that forces you to leave us, or we're going to leave. And that's why a lot of the majority of the residents of Serenity Village, they just take off without saying goodbye. Because if you've always done what you've always did, you're always going to get what you've always got. And that's what they teach us in the room. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. But it says, for we had learned these troubles could be turned into great values. There's proof all over the room. A crack addiction turned into a large program. Even a church that has a large outreach, and that's not me, that's God. And God says in his word that he is not a respecter of persons. He doesn't play favorites. And if you know the Bible, if you have the ability, if you're a 2-talent guy and you turn it in, or gal into 4, you can still share in the same level of happiness that God says. Sometimes be grateful that you don't have a ton of responsibilities. You're envying somebody with all this authority and responsibility. Like Bishop Jakes taught me a long time ago, if I gave you the keys to my life, you'd drive it into a tree. Trust me, you don't want to be me. And what it says now is, it says, when the 12th step is seen in its full implication, it is really talking about the kind of love. I'm here to tell you, when you love, like Robin explained to those women, when you receive the love of God, you learn to love yourself, and you can love people authentically, no matter what. It doesn't have a price tag on it. It says, our 12th step always says, as a result of practicing all the steps. So what this is saying is you can't have the awakening without doing the steps. And I'm going to get to that in a moment, because when I was studying, God gave me something. We have each found something called a spiritual awakening. In a really, very real sense, he has been transformed. You heard that word earlier. Because he had laid hold of a source of strength. Like Bob said on the 9th step, who's going to help you go make these direct amends? My sponsor. God always answers a problem with a person. And God himself. But Bob learned to rely on God as he was being elevated. So many of us sabotage success. Now check out what it says here. It's so important. A source of strength, which is, in one way or another, he had to hitherto. Do you know that I had denied myself a source of strength that God would have provided me for 37 years? And when I studied this today, I spent some time in meditation, and the reason why I denied myself of the love that God had for me, or the love that people had, because I didn't think very highly of myself. So a lot of times we deny ourselves of things. I love what the literature says here. He finds himself in the possession of a degree of honesty, tolerance, unselfishness, peace of mind, love, of which he had thought himself quite incapable. What he has received is a free gift, like Steve read, yet usually, at least in a smaller part, he has made himself ready to receive it. That's what Pastor had said to the women on Sunday night from Teen Challenge. Receive this. So many of us can't even receive a compliment. I told Jim I like his hair. Stand up, Jim. Doesn't he got a nice hair today? Let's give him a hand. And I said, say thank you. Receive the compliment. See, a lot of us are so, and that's not Jim. He's a transformed individual, but a lot of us don't want to receive a compliment because we think there's motives tied to it. But that's not how it works with God. And what it says, what he had received was a free gift. It says, we saw that this would need we need to constantly give of ourselves. That's what separates free people from people that are sober in captivity. Constantly give of ourselves. How constant did you give of yourself to your addiction? That's the standard that you have to walk in recovery. Constantly of ourselves without demands of repayment. And so you have to get away from getting noticed. Yes, when you're early in recovery, everybody say, oh, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. Good job. But after a while, it's just expected. I'll never forget, I was playing Bantam hockeys, and the high school team pulled me up out of Bantams to play high school, and the coach said to me, hey, don't expect a pat on the back every time you come off the ice. Your performance is expected. That was hard for me to swallow, because I like the pat on the back. But what it's saying here is you can't, with demands to be noticed or, hey, great job. Yes, if somebody tells you great job, that does feel good, but you can't operate just depending on that. When we persistently did this, we gradually found that people were attracted to us like never before. And even if they failed us, we could be understanding and not seriously affected. You better expect people are going to fail you, and you're going to fail people. We're all human. Don't put somebody in a position of standard that you can't even walk in. Yes. I'm a pastor with problems. And I've had more people fail me in 14 years than I ever had in my life. But I couldn't quit. I couldn't stop trusting, and that's what AA is teaching us here. But so many of us are so seriously affected by people. Why would you give somebody that much power? I mean, you got to come to expect it, but it doesn't mean you can't trust again. When we develop still more, there's no limits on your level of development with God in this program. We discovered the best possible source of emotional stability to be God himself. We found that dependence upon his perfect justice, forgiveness, love was healthy, and that it would work where nothing else would. See, like somebody said, I think Bob said it on the ladder, what do you got to lose? A lot of us have lost everything. So what do you have to lose by doing this? But we want to put our lives on the line for things that we've already lost in, and we return to the areas that we've already lost in. NA says, in a sense, step 12 encompasses all the steps. We must make use of what we've learned in the previous 11 as we carry the message and practice the principles of recovery in all of our affairs. That means you can't be different in these rooms than you are at work. That's right. See, a lot of us are Jekyll and Hyde types. I'm whoever you want me to be. And I'm a chameleon because I thrive to be accepted. So I'm going to drop the F-bombs, talk about the women and be inappropriate during work, but I come here and I think I'm an angel. So who am I? I don't know. I'm whoever you want me to be. We have to get away from that. And what it's saying is, individually and collectively, each step is contributed to the extraordinary transformation. In order to have extraordinary transformation, you have to put extra on top of ordinary things. If you're just going to have an ordinary program, you're not going to experience extraordinary transformation, which we know is a spiritual awakening. Many of us have wondered how the spiritual awakening comes about. Does it happen all at once? See, and this is where God gave me the revelation. I'm going to read it. Does it happen all at once, or does it occur slowly over a long period of time? I would much rather have it happen slowly. Like Robin said, this is not a sprint. This is I mean, look at how good God is. I have done so much LSD, cocaine, and opiates. My brain should be fried. How can I remember what Robin said a half hour ago? Because I've learned now to remember the right things and forget the wrong things. Too many of us tonight are remembering things that we should forget, and we're forgetting things that we should remember. Check this out. While there may be great variations within our experience about this awakening of the Spirit, we all agree that the results of working the steps. It says, in order to cultivate this awakening, we have found it essential to express our gratitude. God, how can you not be grateful to be breathing? I mean, no one's incarcerated here. But I was grateful even when I was incarcerated when I was working a spiritual program. But you can never, your attitude determines your altitude, and we need to have an attitude of gratitude, and the altitude is a lot different up there. And also we know, I don't know what the word is, but the higher you go, the thinner the air becomes. And those steps become smaller. And it's easier to fall. Check this out. It's so important that we grasp this now. It says express gratitude and practice the principles of recovery in every area of our life. However, this isn't something we do only to ensure our own recovery. It's about helping others. But by carrying the message, it does put a good insurance policy on your own recovery. And I say it all the time. Can somebody else get sober working your program? They can if they're working the program. It says, in fact, the spirit of the 12th step is grounded in the principles of selfless service. See, the key is a degree of selfishness is healthy. I am selfish because I carry the message. A lot of this stuff won't make a lot of sense, but I'm selfish in carrying the message, but by carrying the message, it keeps me sober. Being selfish doesn't mean thinking less of yourself. It means thinking of yourself less. Too many of us are self-absorbed. Upholding the principle of our efforts to carry the message is of utmost importance. Both our own spiritual state and to those who we are trying to carry the message. Helping others is perhaps the highest aspiration of the human heart. Helping other people, the highest aspiration of the human heart. Something we have been entrusted with, as Steve read, with the result of a higher power working in our lives. We would do well to remember to ask God of our understanding to continue working through us in our efforts to carry the message. To practice the principles of recovery in all of our affairs is what we strive for. Only through the practice of these principles in our daily life can we hope to achieve the spiritual growth necessary to maintain our reprieve from the disease of addiction. NA basic text. We came to Narcotics Anonymous as a result of the wreckage of our past. None of us got here because we were doing extremely well. The last thing we expected was an awakening of the Spirit. God will always blow your expectations. It's okay if you just came here to get sober, but if you actually stay here, it's much more here to offer. And what it says here, I mean, an awakening of the Spirit means you have goals and dreams and ambitions again. And what it says, we just wanted to stop hurting. I say this often, if you stop hurting, you'll stop hurting. If you haven't stopped hurting internally, you will continue to hurt people externally. If you have a victim mentality, there will be many victims that cross your path. And check out what it's saying. It's so profound. What it's saying here, the steps lead to an awakening of the spiritual nature. This awakening is evidenced by the change. See, when you're in it, you don't see it. That's why we need each other. If you have a sponsor, your sponsor, see, when you're doing bad, you won't see it. But when you're doing good, you won't see it either. So you need somebody else to point it out to you. A lot of people that don't think they're changing at all are changing and transforming dramatically. But those who think they're all that in a bag of chips are going down. Because the Bible says pride goes before destruction. And check this out. It says, however, all spiritual awakenings have some things in common. Common elements include an end to loneliness and a sense of direction in our lives. Many of us believe that spiritual awakening is meaningless unless accompanied by an increase in peace of mind and concern for others. In order to maintain peace of mind, we strive to live in the here and now. By this time, most of us realize that the only way that we can keep what was given to us is by sharing this new gift of life with a still suffering head. Like I said about Brian, paying it forward. Nobody in this room has to help you. But God is a man of his word, so whatever he says, he holds himself to it. But we're not God, so anybody that's willing to teach you and study to teach to you, you should be happy for that. You should be grateful that because, I mean, I didn't get here because I had a laundry list of my concern for people, and now I expect people to have concern for me. I had no concern for my own life. And it's a gift, and we want to really do that. It says, this is the best insurance against relapse to the torturous existence of using. What type of insurance policy do you got? How often are you carrying the message? How often are you serving? How often are you working the literature and the steps? How often are you getting out of your own way? If you are, you have a good insurance policy. But it says, we give freely and gratefully of our time and service and what we have found here. This service we speak of in Narcotics Anonymous is the primary purpose of our groups. I'm going to talk about purpose over the next 7 weeks, and it's going to change, if you're open to it, the course of your life and mine as well. Service work is carrying the message to the addict who still suffers. There's a lot of sober people in here, but there's just as many suffering people. You can suffer without active addiction. And what it's saying here, it says, the more eagerly we wade in the work, the richer our spiritual awakening will be. The first way we carry the message speaks for itself. People see us on the street and remember us from the devious, frightened loners. They notice the fear leaving our faces. They see us gradually come alive. My dad says this all the time. He was very successful in business. He says, the greatest thing I've ever experienced in life is to see somebody come into Serenity Village with their head down, not look anybody in the eye, and the light bulb of their soul go on in their eyes. There's no greater fulfillment than that. And if you can have experienced that with one individual in your lifetime, that's an awesome life to live. But it's much bigger than that. It's much bigger than that. And the key that I've found is that people gradually come alive. It says, once we find the NA way, boredom and complacency have no place. That's why Steve Skronik says every day he wakes up, he reads his 24-hour-a-day book that he got in treatment, how many years ago? 16 years ago, still reading it. And he says every day's an adventure. Look around the crowd here. There's some adventurous people here. You never quite know what you're going to get here. Attend one of our church services. We got a couple people nodding out, a couple people totally intoxicated, and then a Christian sitting on the end of the road praising Jesus. It's an adventure. It's a total adventure. This is much more adventurous than sitting in a closet peeking out the peephole. But this is what God gave me. It says, once we find the NA way, boredom and complacency have no place in our new life. By staying clean, we begin to practice spiritual principles such as hope, surrender, acceptance, honesty, open-mindedness, willingness, faith, tolerance, patience, humility, unconditional love, sharing, caring. This is where God gave me the revelation. I believe a lot of you who are new have had a moment of clarity, but that's not a spiritual awakening. I believe a lot of you are experiencing hope and tolerance. It's a moment of clarity, but you will not get the spiritual awakening which will stick, which is permanent, without working the steps. Because all of us, a lot of us, this isn't our first rodeo. We've experienced the moment of clarity. So, new in my recovery, I experience hope and surrender, acceptance, honesty, open-mindedness, willingness, faith, tolerance. But that's just a moment of clarity. It's not a spiritual awakening. And that will go away if you do not work the steps. So a lot of us are trying to bank our recovery, our insurance policy of recovery, on a moment of clarity. There's a big difference between that and a spiritual awakening. It says practicing spiritual principles in our daily lives lead us to a new image of ourselves. Honesty, humility, and open-mindedness help us to treat our associates fairly. Our decisions become tempered with tolerance. We learn to respect ourselves. I had a revelation last night when I was watching my wife unpack about how is it that parents can drop kids off here, and kids, I'm saying 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70-year-old kids, and then tell me that my son's a liar, he's a thief, he's left, he stole from me. 60 days later, the son talks the parent into convincing the parent that this place is a joke, recovery's a joke. How is it that I question the parent's integrity? I had a gal in my office today that came to me, and she's mature. She's one of my spiritual daughters. She started saying something about somebody, and I said, no, you ain't doing that here. Don't come complaining about, and she wasn't complaining, don't get me wrong. I put the mirror in front. This situation would never happen unless you created it. So once you get that snowball rolling down the hill, you can't control it. So a lot of us want to come and we want people to co-sign something, and it's like I often said in 14 years, it's like, oh, my God, I mean, last week I couldn't do anything wrong, now I'm just a jerk. I've done nothing different last week to this week. You've totally changed your perspective. So your identity can't be wrapped up in people's opinions of you. It goes on to say, yes, we are a vision of hope. We are examples of a program working. I told Leanne, and Leanne just got the diagnosis back from the doctor, and she's can't stand up, Leanne. Let's give her a hand. And you never know how stuff's going to, but I said, God always watches out for the examples, because he ain't got many of them. And he wants to protect the examples, because the examples are the ones that show the doubters that there really is a God. And just like the earlier literature said, when people see you walking down the street with a light of hope in your eyes, even the skeptics are going to say, man, there must be a God. And the key is this: any of you who are struggling with people that are still active in addiction, you want to go save them, work a program so when they're ready to receive the help, you'll be the strongest version of you you've ever been. Don't go run after them when you're not even ready to take care of yourself yet. Amen. That's not carrying the message. That's called carrying chaos. And the honest to God truth is you just want to see what's going on in the dope house. All right, I'll leave that alone. We do recover to live clean and happy lives. The steps do not end here. The steps are a new beginning. 2 Peter 1. Have you given the steps your every effort? Therefore, my brothers and sisters, make every effort to confirm your calling. You have to confirm that you want to be sober by working the steps. If you're not working the steps, you don't want to be sober. And it's all unconscious, and you don't even know that's true, but it's the bottom, honest to God truth. If you do not have a sponsor and you're not working the steps, unconsciously you're really saying, I don't care if I'm sober or not. Yeah. It goes on to say, for if you do these things, the big question is, if you do them, you will never stumble. And you will receive a rich welcome. When God transforms your life, people are actually glad to see you. When you carry the message of freedom, when families call you at 2 a.m. and they're hopeless and they're waiting for you to show up at their house, and you are the change, you are the hope, and you walk in humility, and they call you because they ain't got no one else to call, because you are carrying a message that can help their son or daughter get free. That's life. Yes, business. Yes, success is good. Yes, abundance is good. That's why I get up every morning. Not to close a business deal, not to run a church. It's to make an impact on another individual's life. And if you do that, God will take care of each and every one of your needs. Check out what it says here. 1 Corinthians, by the 12th step, you should know discipline. You can't do whatever you want to do or think whatever you want to think. All athletes are disciplined in their training. They do it to win a prize that will not fade away. I'm tired of rebuilding. I'm tired of it. I want to build. We're building in this place. We're building in this place. I don't want it to fade away, and the only thing that can screw it up is me. Because once God ordains it and anoints it, it's prone to be successful. And God will protect what he's building. So I run with purpose in every step, every move, every thought, every action I do, I run with purpose. But when I don't run with purpose and when I take a misstep, I promptly admit it. It's not if. I am not shadow boxing. Life is not an experiment. Your recovery is not an experiment. It's a way of life. It says, I discipline my body like an athlete in training to do what it should. Yeah, you're tired and you don't want to go to a meeting anyway. Pretty soon you'll build the endurance and you'll go to a meeting without even thinking you wanted or not wanted to go to a meeting. Stace taught me this years ago. There's no debate where I'm going to be on Tuesday. I'm going to be at Tuesday the rest of my life, one day at a time, here. I don't have to wonder where I'm going to be tomorrow night. I know exactly. So life is not a guessing game. What should I do today? But at the same breath, somebody said it to Brian. I think it was Chad. The road is narrow, but if the road is narrow, it's wide. God gives you so much opportunity. I mean, I'm so great. But otherwise, I fear that preaching to others, I myself may be disqualified. I'm tired of disqualifying myself. Proverbs 11, by helping others, you help yourself. Is it possible to give away to become richer? I told Dewey that. Stand up, Dewey. He's a good friend of mine. Give him a hand. Now, we all know Dewey and myself got a lot to work on, but I told Dewey 2 years ago, I said, get off the sales floor on Thursday night. If you're a salesperson, you never leave the sales floor, because if you leave the sales floor, you leave the commission of the sales floor. I told him God would honor it. He hasn't been doing it on any Thursdays. He comes here faithfully to serve. He's the record salesperson in his organization now. It says, is it possible to give away and become richer? Is it also possible to hold on too tightly and lose everything? What are you holding on to? What's killing you? It goes on to say, yes, the liberal man should be rich. By watering others, he waters himself. I blessed Mike Shea and Peg last week because I'm able to be a blessing today. God has raised me up from the pit of poverty and to walk in the abundance. And I say that not to boast on me. I say that to boast on God. And I send him with a blessing for his family up to Glenwood because God has blessed me. And in order to be a blessing, you got to know you're blessed. But in order to continue to be a blessing, you need to be a blessing to others. Peg texted me when Mike got home that night. She goes, you must be feeling refreshed because you just refreshed us. You need to know how God works. If God can get it through you, he'll continue to get it to you. God bless you.